Hey guys, and welcome back. This is episode 4, and today we'll be talking about working with an audience. Let's get to it.
Audiences can be used in a multitude of different ways in site-specific work. Because you're operating outside of a traditional theater venue, you have a lot more freedom in deciding where to place your audience, which is both very exciting and presents some very unique challenges. As we mentioned in our introductory video, there are a number of different types of site-specific work, and this affects the use of the space not only from a performer's perspective, but also from an audience's perspective. In all of these options, it is imperative to consider audience sightlines.
So what is a sightline? A sightline is basically the line from a viewer's eyes to what they're able to see. In site-specific work, it is especially important to consider these sightlines because we aren't able to space our audience out exactly how we want them when the performance comes. It's also very important what our audience can't see, since we don't really have a proper offstage and we don't have wings, because, we're not on a stage. This can be hiding performers in plain sight or behind a door, possibly, depending on where you are. Noticing where your on and off stage are.
When considering audience sightlines, you first need to establish where you're going to put your audience and how much autonomy you are giving your audience in their experience of your work.
I feel as though audiences have a lovely idealistic view sometimes that the artist has control over all aspects of the production, and that we in fact chose everything that happened.
For example, in an immersive site-specific performance situation, your audience has the highest degree of autonomy because they are welcome to wander throughout the space at their own will and experience the story entirely. If you're interested in having more control over audience sightlines, a promenade style or stationary audience may interest you. Promenade style performances still offer some degree of autonomy to the audience because although they're being led along a predetermined track, they still have the option to look wherever they please. Task time! This exercise is inspired and adapted from Denise Fujiwara. In whatever space you're in right now, close your eyes, move your head, and then open your eyes like a camera shutter. Examine what you're able to see in your current field of vision. What can you see from this placement of your head in space? If you were an audience member, where are places where you would be able to easily see a performer? And where are some places that, from your position, it would be more difficult to see a performer? Consider also what some quote-unquote offstage places might be. For example, behind a tree or under a table out of sight. Repeat this exercise, closing your eyes, moving your head, and opening your eyes again a few times to examine the space that you're in from different angles, and then return to this video once you've finished.
Safety zone. When employing immersive or promenade-style performances, there are a few additional things to consider. Are the paths for your audience to walk along well lit? Are they wheelchair or limited mobility accessible? If an audience member begins to feel overwhelmed, how can they remove themselves from the action? Especially in an immersive setting, how can we ensure that an audience member doesn't go into performer-only backstage areas? It may be necessary for a team of ushers or people tasked with directing the audience where to go and communicating these boundaries. It is imperative to consider this throughout your development process because it also has a say in your audience capacity. How many people can you safely and efficiently have in your audience?
Another thing to consider is the proximity of your audience to your performers.
I think part of why I love site-specific dance is the proximity, and I am very intentional when I make site-specific work about knowing where my audience will be as I'm developing it. Audience on two sides of the space. So again, in a proscenium setting where you're performing just to one direction, breaking the fourth wall. The fourth wall you're performing in one way. With site-specific dance, it becomes often 360 degrees. So knowing what that feels like, what does it feel like to be far away from something? What does it feel like to be so close to something? So that was definitely part of the storytelling, was the proximity of the audience to the performers.
Something that has been brought up by a number of site-specific creators is the cinematic quality of site-specific work. Depending on your location, you can explore placing performers very far away from your audience, like in the middle of a field or down a long hallway. Or you can experiment with the intimacy of having an audience extremely close to a performer, or having an audience peer through windows and doors to see a performance happening inside a room. Is the relationship between your performers and the audience? Do your performers see and interact with the audience, or do they act as if the audience is not there? Having explored all of these considerations for audience and sightlines, we will leave you with another task. Using any of the tools that we've discussed so far, create a short site-specific movement sequence. Then, film it from 3 different locations. Or, if you have access to people in whatever space you're in, ask 3 people to watch your performance from 3 different locations. Keep in mind audience sightlines, proximity to the performers, and whether or not you acknowledge or interact with your audience members. How does each perspective offer a different experience to this work that you've created?
Don't forget to check in next time to see how we put all of these wonderful things together to create a site-specific performance.